the heart of darkness, where shadows dance and raindrops whisper secrets, lies a world of spine-chilling tales waiting to be untold. Welcome back to J&M Paranormal, where we dare to venture into the chilling unknown. Gather around, for in the rain's embrace, secrets are revealed, mysteries come alive, and nightmares are born. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a chilling tale. Get ready to be thrilled or chilled to the bone. The air was thick with a sense of unease as the moonlight filtered through the thick canopy of trees, casting eerie shadows on the abandoned circus grounds. The Ferris wheel loomed like a skeletal giant, its rusted frame creaking in the wind. But it was the freak show tent that drew the most attention. Many had heard whispers about the horrors that lurked within, but few dared to venture near. One night, a group of curious teenagers gathered at the outskirts of the circus grounds, emboldened by the thrill of the forbidden and the allure of the unknown. Among them was Sarah, a fearless girl with an insatiable curiosity that sometimes bordered on recklessness. She led the way, her flashlight cutting through the darkness as they approached the menacing tent. As they reached the entrance, the wind seemed to howl in protest, warning them of the horrors that lay ahead. But the group pressed on, too intrigued to turn back. The creaking of the wooden sign above the entrance sent shivers down their spines as they read the faded words, "Chamber of Freaks, enter if you dare." Nervously laughing off their unease, they stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit, and a strange, musky scent hung in the air. Cages lined the walls, each containing a unique and terrifying sight. A two-headed serpent twisted and writhed, its slitted eyes staring intently at the visitors. A grotesque figure with elongated limbs and sharp talons reached out from another cage, causing them to step back in horror. As they moved deeper into the tent, Sarah noticed a shadowy figure lurking in the corner. Straining her eyes, she made out the form of a man, or what seemed like a man, hunched over and concealed beneath a tattered cloak. His eyes glinted with an unsettling gleam, and as they drew nearer, the air grew colder. Sarah's friends were on edge, but she couldn't resist the urge to confront the mysterious figure. Her heart pounded in her chest as she asked, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" The figure remained silent for a moment before letting out a haunting cackle that echoed through the tent. "I am the ringmaster of this cursed circus," he rasped, his voice sending chills down their spines. Once, this was a place of wonder and awe, but darkness has consumed it, and now it is a realm of nightmares. The ringmaster stepped forward, revealing his disfigured face. His skin was stretched taut over his skull, and his eyes were sunken and hollow. He wore a twisted grin that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. "Would you like to see the true horrors of this forsaken place?" he asked, his voice a sinister whisper. Before they could respond, the cages around them rattled, and the grotesque creatures inside began to stir. The two-headed serpent lunged at its bars, and the figure with elongated limbs contorted in a disturbing dance. The teenagers stumbled backward in terror, desperate to escape the nightmarish scene. But the ringmaster had other plans. With a wave of his bony hand, the tent seemed to come alive, its walls pulsating with an otherworldly energy. The group found themselves trapped, unable to find the exit they had entered through. As panic set in, Sarah's instincts kicked in, and she realized the only way to escape was to face the darkness head-on. "We must confront our fears," she shouted to her friends, trying to steady her trembling voice. One by one, they faced their deepest fears. fighting against the nightmarish manifestations that the circus conjured. It was a harrowing ordeal, but Sarah's determination inspired the others to find their strength as well. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the circus grounds returned to stillness. The cages were once again motionless, and the freak show tent appeared dormant. The ringmaster vanished into the shadows, leaving the group bewildered and shaken, but alive. As they stumbled out of the tent, they made a pact never to speak of that night again. The circus grounds were left undisturbed, a haunting reminder of the horrors they had encountered. But somewhere in the darkness, the ringmaster still lurked, forever bound to the cursed circus, waiting for the next foolhardy souls to awaken the terrors that lay within. In the heart of the dense, foreboding forest stood an ancient, abandoned mansion known as the Cursed Manor. Its eerie silhouette cast long shadows that seemed to dance in the moonlight. Locals spoke in hushed whispers of a horrifying beast that lurked within the mansion's crumbling walls, a creature so malevolent that it struck terror into the hearts of those who dared to venture near. Legend had it that long ago, a wicked sorceress inhabited the mansion. Consumed by dark magic and evil desires, she conjured a cursed creature to serve as her loyal enforcer. The beast, a grotesque amalgamation of different animals, had razor-sharp claws, eyes that glowed like blood-red embers, and a feral hunger that could never be sated. As the years passed, the sorceress's malevolent reign ended with a vicious mob storming the mansion, seeking to end her wicked ways. The beast, now free from its cursed servitude, rampaged through the mob, ripping them apart with relentless brutality. But as the last flicker of life escaped the sorceress, the mansion and its surrounding woods were cursed forever. Rumors spread of the beast's relentless thirst for blood and its unnerving ability to shapeshift, blending seamlessly into the darkness. It preyed upon unwary travelers who dared to stray too close, vanishing without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a haunting sense of dread. One chilling autumn night, a group of thrill-seeking youths decided to challenge fate and explore the cursed manor. Ignoring the cautionary tales, they believed the legends to be mere superstitions meant to deter the faint of heart. Armed with flashlights, the group hesitantly entered the dilapidated mansion. Creaking floorboards echoed with every step they took, and the chilling wind whistled through the broken windows. The stench of decay permeated the air, and the eerie silence amplified their unease. As they wandered deeper into the mansion, a strange, guttural growl echoed through the corridors. Panic gripped the group as their flashlights caught a glimpse of gleaming eyes in the darkness. Before they could react, the beast lunged forward, its nightmarish form morphing before their eyes. Desperation fueled their flight, but the beast was relentless in its pursuit. One by one, the youths fell victim to its savage onslaught, their terrified screams swallowed by the suffocating darkness. Only one of them managed to escape, a young woman named Sarah. She ran for her life, not daring to look back. With every breath she took, she could feel the beast's hot breath on her neck, and its dreadful growls vibrated through the very ground she tread. In the final moments of her escape, Sarah stumbled upon an old rusted knife, an ancient relic left behind by the sorceress herself. As fear and determination battled within her, she knew she had no choice but to face the creature that haunted the cursed manor. Sarah lured the beast into the heart of the mansion, where moonlight seeped through the roof's tattered remnants. Shadows danced all around as Sarah clutched the knife with trembling hands, her heart pounding in her ears. With a primal scream, she faced the beast. The ensuing battle was a frenzied dance of life and death. The creature's malevolence clashed with Sarah's fierce will to survive. In a final, desperate maneuver, she plunged the ancient knife into the beast's heart, releasing it from its cursed existence. As the lifeless form of the creature crumbled before her, the mansion seemed to sigh in relief. Sarah emerged, the sole survivor of the terrifying encounter, bearing the weight of the haunted tales she would forever carry. From that day forward, the cursed manor became an unspoken taboo, and the legend of the killer beast lived on in whispers around campfires. The tales serve as a stark reminder that some horrors are better left undisturbed, for within the depths of darkness, nightmares take shape, and the primal fear of the unknown may very well become all too real. In the heart of a forgotten city lies a dark secret that has been buried for centuries: the catacombs. These shadowy underground tunnels and chambers were once used to house the deceased, but they have long been abandoned and shunned by the living. Many tales of horror surround the catacombs, warning people to stay away, but some are drawn to the eerie allure of the subterranean labyrinth. The tale begins with a group of adventurous souls, young and foolish, seeking a thrill on the night of All Hallows Eve. Eager to experience something spine-chilling, they decide to venture into the depths of the catacombs, fueled by the stories of restless spirits and malevolent entities that roam the tunnels in search of lost souls. With only flickering lanterns to light their way, they descend into the abyss, leaving behind the comforting glow of the city streets. The air is heavy with the scent of decay and dampness, and the oppressive darkness seems to have a life of its own, swallowing their courage with each step. As they delve deeper, the passageways twist and turn, leading them into a maze of bones and forgotten history. The walls are lined with skulls, a macabre display of the past that seems to be watching their every move. Whispers echo through the tunnels, growing louder and more distinct with each passing moment, though no one can discern their source. One by one, strange occurrences befall the group. A chilling breeze envelops them even in the stifling underground, sending shivers down their spines. Shadows dance in the periphery of their vision, playing tricks on their minds, and eerie laughter taunts them from the darkness. Yet, they press on, unable to resist the allure of the unknown. Soon, they realize they have lost their way, and panic sets in. The once solid ground feels treacherous beneath their feet, as if it could swallow them whole at any moment. Their lanterns begin to flicker ominously, casting long, distorted shadows that seem to be reaching out to grasp them. As they wander aimlessly through the catacombs, their senses betray them. They hear distant screams and the wailing of anguished souls, sending terror coursing through their veins. The boundary between the living and the dead blurs, and the spirits of those who were laid to rest here seem to be stirring from their eternal slumber. Suddenly, a blood-curdling cry pierces the air, and the group is separated in the chaos that ensues. Panic-stricken, they desperately call out to one another, but their voices are swallowed by the depths of the catacombs. Alone and disoriented, each one experiences their own nightmarish visions. They encounter apparitions that haunt their memories, embodying their deepest fears and regrets. Some face vengeful spirits seeking retribution for past wrongs, while others confront their own mortality and the futility of life. With each passing moment, the catacombs seem to shift and change, toying with their perceptions of reality. Walls that were once solid give way to vast chasms, and familiar passages lead them in circles, trapping them in an endless loop of terror. As the night wears on, the line between the living and the dead blurs further, and the group's collective fear feeds the malevolent energy that pervades the catacombs. They become puppets in a nightmarish play, orchestrated by unseen forces, and it becomes increasingly unclear if they will ever escape the clutches of the catacombs. Legend has it that the souls who venture into the catacombs on All Hallows Eve are destined to become a part of its chilling history, forever haunting its depths and beckoning others to join them in the eternal darkness. And so, the catacombs continue to lure in those seeking thrills and secrets. But beware, for once you step foot into the abyss, there may be no return, and you too might become lost in the chilling embrace of the catacombs, forever trapped between the worlds of the living and the dead. The Carnival of Nightmares. Once, in a long-forgotten town, a mysterious carnival emerged under the pale light of the full moon. It materialized overnight, as if summoned by some unholy force. The townspeople watched in awe and trepidation as the carnival's eerie rides and attractions took shape in the dimly lit field on the outskirts of town. Among the carnival's sinister offerings was the notorious Carnival of Nightmares dark ride. It stood ominously at the heart of the carnival, its entrance adorned with flickering bulbs that cast a haunting glow. The ride's reputation preceded it, with tales of people vanishing and strange occurrences haunting those who dared venture inside. Rumors whispered of a malevolent carnival magician who cursed the ride centuries ago. The legend spoke of a wicked soul who sought immortality through dark rituals and necromancy. His maleficent ambition backfired, trapping his twisted spirit within the dark ride, forever bound to torment those who dared to enter. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the carnival came alive, beckoning the curious and the brave. In the distance, eerie music echoed through the night, luring the townsfolk toward the ethereal spectacle. Against the backdrop of a crescent moon, a small group of daring teenagers gathered, led by Emily, a headstrong young woman with a penchant for adventure. Drawn by curiosity and a dash of youthful bravado, they vowed to unravel the mysteries of the Carnival of Nightmares. The air grew colder as they approached the dark ride. The flickering bulbs seemed to flicker more menacingly, and the sound of distant laughter sent shivers down their spines. With trepidation, they stepped into the line, each step feeling heavier, as if an invisible force tried to deter them. At the entrance, an old carnival barker with hollow eyes and a tattered top hat greeted them with an unsettling smile. "Welcome, brave souls, to the Carnival of Nightmares," he croaked, his voice raspy and unnerving. "Once you enter, there's no turning back. Are you sure you're ready to confront your deepest fears?" Emily exchanged glances with her friends, and with determined nods, they paid their admission and boarded the rickety carts that awaited them. The doors creaked shut, and the ride jerked into motion, plunging them into darkness. The first scene depicted a desolate graveyard, with skeletal figures clawing their way out of shallow graves. The air filled with the stench of decay, and the ride's carts seemed to move on their own, taking unexpected turns. Panic set in as the teenagers realized they were no longer in control. In each subsequent scene, their worst fears manifested before their eyes. Emily found herself in an endless abyss, tormented by her fear of isolation. Her friends faced phantoms of their past, monstrous creatures, and nightmarish landscapes that defied reason. The carnival magician's laughter echoed throughout the ride, his sinister voice taunting and mocking their terror. Each twist and turn seemed to drag on forever, as if time itself had lost its way within the nightmarish labyrinth. As the ride neared its end, the teenagers' courage waned, and they yearned for escape. But the Carnival of Nightmares had other plans. It wasn't done with them yet. Suddenly, the cart screeched to a halt in front of a twisted figure wearing a tattered top hat and a malevolent grin, the carnival magician himself. "Welcome to my domain," he hissed, his eyes ablaze with wickedness. In a chilling incantation, the magician summoned the malevolent spirits trapped within the ride, and they swirled around the terrified teens like a haunting fog. The friends clung to each other, desperate to break free from the clutches of the maleficent magician. But just as it seemed all hope was lost, Emily remembered an old legend passed down through generations. In a trembling voice, she recited the words that were said to banish the carnival magician back to the darkness. As she uttered the incantation, the carnival magician's hold weakened, and the spirits dispersed into the night. The carts began to move backward, retracing their steps through the nightmarish scenes. The magician's furious screams echoed through the darkness as he was banished once more. When the carts finally emerged into the moonlit night, the teenagers stumbled out, shaken but alive. The carnival had vanished as abruptly as it had appeared, leaving only an empty field in its wake. From that night on, the Carnival of Nightmares became a distant memory, a tale told to frightened children around campfires. But the courageous group of friends knew the truth, that somewhere in the shadows, the carnival magician and his dark ride awaited, biding their time for the next unsuspecting souls to venture into their malevolent realm. And so, the legend lived on, a chilling reminder that some nightmares are best left undisturbed. In the depths of a long-forgotten cemetery, shrouded in mist and darkness, lay an ancient burial ground known only to the most intrepid souls. Locals spoke of eerie legends surrounding this desolate place, but few dared to venture near its haunted borders. One fateful night, 5 reckless friends decided to challenge the sinister tales and embarked on a daring adventure to explore the mysteries hidden beneath the crumbling tombstones. As the group approached a graveyard, their lanterns cast wavering shadows that danced eerily across the graves. A chilling wind whispered through the trees, and their hearts pounded with a mixture of fear and excitement. James, the most audacious of the group, boasted of his bravery, attempting to hide the unease that gnawed at his soul. Unaware of the malevolent presence lurking among the tombstones, the friends descended into the crypt of an ancient mausoleum. The stale air surrounded them like a suffocating cloak, but their curiosity pushed them forward. As they explored deeper into the crypt's dim interior, they stumbled upon a hidden passage that led to a sinister chamber they had never seen before. The chamber appeared to be an abandoned burial site, with decayed coffins lining the walls. A sense of dread filled the air as they realized they were standing amidst forgotten souls. It was then they discovered an ominous sarcophagus, intricately carved with ominous symbols. Fueled by the intoxicating mix of fear and curiosity, they foolishly decided to open it, seeking hidden treasures or ancient secrets. As the lid creaked open, an ancient curse, long held in check, was released, unleashing malevolent spirits upon the unsuspecting intruders. Panic erupted among the group, and they rushed to escape the suffocating embrace of the cursed tomb. But their desperate attempts were in vain, as the spirits hunted them relentlessly, driven by an unquenchable thirst for vengeance. One by one, the friends fell prey to the wrath of the tormented spirits, consumed by madness and despair. James, the bravado-filled leader, was the last remaining soul. desperately searching for a way out as the shadows closed in around him. In a final act of desperation, James found himself trapped in a claustrophobic underground chamber. The spirits, with their ghostly wails, encircled him. As the walls closed in, panic consumed him, and he realized the horrifying truth: he was being buried alive. Frantic, he clawed at the cold, suffocating earth, his screams swallowed by the unforgiving silence of the tomb. But the spirits were unyielding, watching with empty eyes as the life slowly drained from James. His pleas for mercy echoed futilely in the empty chamber until they faded into nothingness. The cursed burial ground, victorious in its malevolence, claimed yet another victim, leaving nothing but haunting memories of a doomed expedition. The chilling tale of the friends who dared disturb the rest of the tormented spirits in that long-forgotten cemetery became a cautionary legend, warning all who heard it never to disturb the restless dead for the price of curiosity, maybe an eternity of suffering, buried alive in darkness and despair. In the small town of Ravenwood, a sense of foreboding hung in the air like a heavy fog. Among the locals, there was a chilling tale that sent shivers down their spines: the legend of the possessed doll. The story began decades ago when a toy maker named Mr. Aberrant crafted a sinister-looking doll named Isabella. Mr. Aberrant's life had been plagued by tragedy, and many believed he had infused the doll with the spirits of his lost loved ones. Isabella had an eerie porcelain face with cold, lifeless eyes that seemed to follow you wherever you went. Her dress was tattered and stained, giving her an unsettling appearance. The doll found its way into the hands of a young girl named Emily, who lived in a creaky old house at the edge of the woods. Emily was an only child and often felt lonely, so she cherished the company of Isabella, whom she affectionately called Bella. At first, Bella seemed like any other doll, but soon, strange things began to happen. Emily's toys would go missing, only to reappear in bizarre places. At night, Emily heard eerie whispers coming from her bedroom, and the sounds of tiny footsteps echoed through the hallways when no one was there. As days turned into weeks, Bella's malevolent influence grew stronger. Emily's once bright and lively demeanor began to fade, replaced by a haunting darkness that gripped her soul. She became obsessed with the doll, spending every waking moment with it, neglecting her friends and family. Emily's parents noticed the change in their daughter and grew concerned. They attempted to take the doll away, but every time they tried, they were met with inexplicable accidents and misfortunes. It was as if Isabella protected herself, lashing out at anyone who dared to separate her from Emily. One stormy night, the town's fear reached its peak when a neighbor claimed to have seen the doll moving on its own through Emily's bedroom window. The doll's lifeless eyes stared out with an unsettling intensity, as if it was searching for something or someone. The town decided it was time to put an end to the malevolence that had taken hold of their beloved Emily. A group of brave souls gathered at Emily's house, determined to rid her of the cursed doll. They entered the house, armed with crosses, holy water, and candles, ready to perform an exorcism. As they approached Emily's room, they were met with an eerie silence. The door creaked open, revealing Emily sitting on her bed, cradling the doll in her arms. Her eyes were hollow, and her voice was cold and monotone. The exorcism began, and the room filled with the smell of burning sage and the sound of ancient incantations. Isabella's lifeless eyes seemed to blaze with fury, and the doll began to levitate from Emily's arms, twisting and contorting in the air. Emily's soul fought to break free from the doll's grasp, But Isabella's malevolence was strong. The exorcism intensified, and the room shook with an otherworldly force. The doll's porcelain face cracked, revealing an abyss of darkness within. Finally, with a burst of supernatural energy, Isabella was expelled from Emily's body and thrown across the room. The doll lay motionless on the floor, no longer possessed, but the darkness within had taken its toll on Emily. Though the doll was now powerless, the malevolent force that had been unleashed left its mark on Emily's psyche. She was never the same after that night, forever haunted by the memories of her possession. As for Isabella, the cursed doll was sealed away in a vault deep within the town's archives, forever guarded to prevent her malevolence from wreaking havoc once more. The legend of the possessed doll became a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows and the dangers of toying with the supernatural. In the heart of the town, concealed amid a dense forest, stood an ancient and decrepit mansion known as Hollowbrook House. Its sinister reputation had haunted the minds of the townsfolk for generations, as it was believed to be the dwelling of a malevolent spirit, the harbinger of Hollowbrook. The legend spoke of a once respected aristocrat named Lord Archibald Hollowbrook, who lived in the house centuries ago. He was a cruel and merciless man who ruled over the town with an iron fist, inflicting suffering upon the innocent at his whims. One fateful night, driven by his dark desires for power and immortality, Lord Hollowbrook made a terrible pact with the shadows, sacrificing the souls of the townspeople to an otherworldly entity. As the legend goes, the harbinger of Hollowbrook emerged from the depths of darkness, his body a grotesque amalgamation of shadows and despair. The cursed entity took pleasure in tormenting the souls of the innocent, driving them to madness and despair. Those unfortunate enough to encounter the harbinger were haunted by his malevolent presence, their minds twisted by fear until they became mere vessels for the darkness that consumed them. Over the years, Hollowbrook House fell into ruin, its walls cloaked in an eerie mist that seemed to seep from the very soul of the earth. The twisted, gnarled trees surrounding the mansion stood like silent sentinels, their branches clawing at the night sky as if seeking escape from the cursed grounds they grew upon. One moonless night, a group of daring teenagers gathered around a bonfire, sharing spine-chilling tales of terror. The eerie glow from Hollowbrook House loomed in the distance, captivating and haunting them all. Amid the group was Aidan, a bold and adventurous soul who never shied away from a challenge. As the stories of the mansion's haunting unfolded, Aidan's curiosity piqued, and he decided to put the legend to the test. With a determined glint in his eyes, Aidan accepted the challenge, vowing to spend the night within the haunted walls of Hollowbrook House. Armed with only a flashlight, he stepped over the threshold, feeling an icy shiver crawl down his spine as he crossed the boundary between the living and the dead. The creaking of the door closing behind him sent a chill down his back, and the oppressive silence within the mansion was deafening. As Aidan explored the decaying rooms, strange whispers echoed through the corridors, filling him with a sense of unease. Ancient symbols adorned the walls, their meanings lost to time. Every creak and groan of the old house felt like the watchful gaze of unseen eyes. As the hours ticked by, Aidan's confidence began to waver, and a creeping sense of dread washed over him. Suddenly, his flashlight flickered, casting the rooms into darkness. Panic gripped his heart as he fumbled for fresh batteries, but his efforts were in vain. The presence of the harbinger seemed to grow stronger with every passing moment. In the depths of the mansion, a chilling moan resonated through the walls, and the shadows danced wildly on the floor. Fear constricted Aiden's throat as he struggled to find an exit. The mansion seemed to shift and twist, its walls closing in on him like a sinister trap. Just as terror reached its peak, the front door swung open, revealing the pale moonlight that poured into the hallway. Aiden rushed outside, gasping for air, his heart pounding in his chest. Behind him, the mansion exhaled a mournful sigh, its hunger for souls unsated. The legend of the Harbinger of Hollowbrook lived on, retold by those who dared to venture near the haunted mansion. To this day, the eerie glow of the decaying Hollowbrook house can be seen on moonless nights, a reminder of the malevolent spirit that lurks within, forever waiting to claim the souls of the unwary. So beware. Would you ever find yourself in the vicinity of Hollowbrook House? For the Harbinger might be waiting, ready to cast you into an eternal abyss of darkness and despair. In the dense, ominous forests of the Pacific Northwest, a chilling legend haunts the minds of locals and visitors alike, the elusive creature known as Bigfoot. For generations, eerie tales have circulated, warning people of the terrifying encounters that await those who dare to wander too deep into the wilderness. One stormy evening, a group of adventurous friends decided to embark on a weekend camping trip in the heart of the forest. As darkness fell, they gathered around their crackling campfire, exchanging spine-tingling stories about the fabled beast. Some dismissed the legends as mere folklore, while others couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, their fears amplified by the eerie silence surrounding them. Unbeknownst to them, a malevolent force lurked in the shadows, drawn by the scent of human presence and curiosity. This Bigfoot, different from the curious and gentle tales some had heard, had grown resentful of humanity, viewing them as invaders encroaching upon its sacred territory. As the night wore on, the once jovial atmosphere began to shift. Strange noises echoed through the trees, far beyond the reach of the fire's light. Branches snapped, and the ground trembled beneath them, sending shivers down their spines. Nervous laughter disguised the group's escalating fear, but the unease was palpable. The bravest among them decided to venture into the dark woods to dispel the irrational fears that had gripped the group. Armed with flashlights and bolstered by a false sense of courage, they set out into the blackness, convinced they would find nothing more than shadows and rustling animals. As they pressed on, the forest seemed to grow eerier with every step. Their flashlights caught glimpses of large, hairy figures darting through the trees, but every time they focused their beams, there was nothing there, only darkness and silence. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, and it was clear they were not alone. Suddenly, a blood-curdling howl pierced the night, sending the group into a panic. They sprinted back towards their camp, their hearts pounding, convinced they were being pursued by an otherworldly entity. Their campfire, once warm and inviting, now seemed feeble against the darkness that surrounded them. As they stumbled into the camp, they realized that one of their friends was missing. Panic turned into horror as they heard distant screams coming from deeper within the forest. Without a moment's hesitation, they armed themselves with whatever makeshift weapons they could find and charged into the blackness. They followed the desperate cries, fear gnawing at their sanity. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees twisting menacingly, and the very earth beneath their feet felt like quicksand. The oppressive darkness felt suffocating, and they could hardly see beyond the narrow beam of their flashlights. Finally, they found their friend, shaken and terrified, but miraculously unharmed. He recounted a chilling tale of coming face to face with a monstrous creature, its eyes glowing like burning embers, and its breath reeking of decay. The encounter left him paralyzed with fear, trapped in the grip of the creature's malevolent gaze until it lost interest and vanished into the night. Terrified and desperate to escape, the group retreated back to their camp. They huddled together around the dying fire, barricading themselves in a futile attempt to ward off the lurking terror. But as the night dragged on, the forest became an orchestra of eerie sounds, and the encroaching sense of doom was inescapable. When the first rays of sunlight finally broke through the trees, the group gathered their belongings and fled the cursed forest. They left behind their fear and disbelief, replaced by a haunting knowledge that the legends of Bigfoot were not mere fairy tales, but harrowing encounters with an ancient, malevolent force that still roamed the depths of the wilderness. From that day on, the once daring adventurers vowed never to return to the forest. The chilling memories of their encounter with Bigfoot haunted their dreams, and they knew that some legends were not meant to be debunked or explored, for they were born of something far darker and more sinister than they could ever comprehend. In the small town of Blackwood, nestled deep within a dense forest, there was an old, abandoned mansion that stood like a shadow among the trees. It was said that this mansion was once the home of a reclusive and eccentric artist named Edward Green, whose strange and unsettling paintings adorned its walls. Legend had it that Edward Green had been fascinated by the supernatural and had made a pact with an otherworldly entity. In exchange for artistic inspiration, he had unwittingly unleashed the terror known as Slender Man upon the town. Years had passed since those dark days, and the townspeople had learned to avoid the mansion and the surrounding woods for fear of encountering the malevolent spirit of Slender Man. But as the days grew shorter and the nights colder, an air of unease settled over Blackwood once more. Late one autumn evening, a group of adventurous teenagers decided to venture into the forbidden forest, seeking a thrill beyond the ordinary. Among them was Sarah, a curious and brave young woman known for her fearlessness. She had heard the stories of Slender Man, but brushed them off as mere tales meant to scare children. As the group delved deeper into the forest, the trees seemed to close in around them, casting eerie silhouettes in the moonlight. Sarah noticed strange symbols carved into the bark of the trees, sending a shiver down her spine. Still, she urged her friends forward, eager to prove her fearlessness. They stumbled upon the old mansion, its crumbling walls looming like a specter of the past. The moonlight illuminated the eerie paintings inside, depicting faceless figures and haunting landscapes. The air felt heavy with an unseen presence, and unease spread among the group. Ignoring the warnings of the others, Sarah felt drawn to a particular painting at the far end of the room. It depicted a tall, faceless figure draped in darkness, surrounded by terrified children. Unsettled, she turned away, only to catch a glimpse of a slender shadow out of the corner of her eye. As they hurried to leave the mansion, Sarah felt a growing sense of dread. The woods seemed to come alive with whispers, and the distant rustling of leaves took on an eerie quality. Panic gripped her heart as she realized that Slender Man was not just a story, but a real and malevolent force. The group quickened their pace, but Slender Man seemed to toy with them, appearing and disappearing in the shadows, always just out of reach. As they stumbled through the darkness, one by one, Sarah's friends vanished, leaving her all alone in the nightmarish woods. Desperate and terrified, Sarah tried to find her way back, but the forest seemed to shift and change around her. Slender Man's presence was everywhere, and his hypnotic influence clouded her thoughts. Suddenly, a chilling realization struck her. Edward Green's pact with Slender Man had never been broken. The malevolent entity had been waiting for another soul to claim, and now Sarah was its chosen victim. With every step, Slender Man drew closer, his elongated limbs stretching toward her. She could feel his dark presence enveloping her, draining her strength and will. But as Sarah's fear reached its peak, she mustered the last ounce of her courage. In a desperate attempt to break free from Slender Man's grasp, she turned and faced him directly. In a defiant act of bravery, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small silver pocket watch, an heirloom from her grandmother. With trembling hands, she opened the watch, revealing a flickering flame trapped within its polished surface. Sarah knew that this flame represented the strength of her ancestors, a force that had battled darkness throughout generations. As she held the pocket watch aloft, the flame grew brighter, illuminating the night. Slender Man recoiled, his form dissolving into the shadows, weakened by the ancient power he had underestimated. Sarah ran, clutching the pocket watch tightly, the flame protecting her from Slender Man's grasp. With each step, she felt her determination grow stronger, and the woods, once treacherous, began to show her a way out. By the time she emerged from the forest, the first light of dawn was painting the sky in soft hues. Sarah vowed never to forget the horrors she had faced that night, but she also knew that her bravery and her ancestors' legacy had saved her. From that day forward, she became the guardian of the pocket watch, ensuring it would be passed down through her family. For Slender Man may be a force of darkness, but there was still light and courage in the hearts of those who refused to be consumed by fear. Yet, even as the years passed, the legend of Slender Man endured, a reminder to all who heard it that the line between myth and reality was thinner than one might think. And should you ever find yourself walking through the dark woods at night, beware the shadows, for the faceless entity known as Slender Man might be lurking just out of sight, waiting to ensnare the unwary. Once upon a time, in a quaint little town, there lived a young boy named Timmy. Timmy was an imaginative child, but he had a secret fear that followed him into his dreams and sometimes even during the day, the shadow in his closet. Every night, as the moonlight seeped through the window, Timmy's closet seemed to morph into an eerie and sinister place. His toys, once cheerful and comforting during the day, turned into eerie silhouettes. The door creaked open slightly, and Timmy would lie frozen in his bed, afraid to move. One fateful night, as a thunderstorm raged outside, Timmy awoke to the sound of scratching coming from his closet. He clutched his blanket tightly and peered towards the source of the noise. To his horror, he saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at him from within the darkness of the closet. His heart pounded in his chest as the eyes seemed to inch closer and closer to him. Paralyzed with fear, Timmy could only watch as the shadowy figure emerged from the closet, revealing its tall and slender form. It had elongated limbs and sharp claws that scraped against the wooden floor with each step. The creature spoke in a haunting whisper, its voice filled with malevolence. "Timmy, I know what keeps you up at night." Trembling, Timmy managed to utter, "What do you want?" The creature smirked. "I feed on fear, and you, Timmy, are my favorite dish. The more frightened you are, the stronger I become." Desperate to escape, Timmy thought of his parents sleeping in the next room. He mustered up the courage to shout for them, but no sound came out. It was as if the creature had stolen his voice. The shadowy entity continued, "Don't bother calling for help. No one can save you from me. I am the fear that lurks in every corner of your mind." As the creature moved closer, Timmy's fear intensified. But somewhere in the depths of his fear, he found a glimmer of bravery. He remembered his parents' words about facing fears head-on. Summoning his inner strength, Timmy took a deep breath and said, "You're just a figment of my imagination, a product of my fear." To his surprise, the creature faltered for a moment. It seemed perplexed, as if it hadn't expected this response. But then, it regained its sinister grin and laughed. "Oh, but fear is what makes me real, little one." Timmy closed his eyes for a brief moment, ignoring the creature's taunts. He pictured a shield of bravery surrounding him, protecting him from the malevolent entity. When he opened his eyes, he saw the creature's form wavering, as if it were fading away. Timmy realized that facing his fear head-on had weakened the entity's hold on him. With newfound courage, Timmy spoke firmly. "You don't control me. I won't be afraid anymore." As he said those words, the creature let out a blood-curdling scream and vanished into thin air. The room returned to its usual appearance, and the closet door closed gently. From that night on, Timmy's fear of the shadow in the closet began to wane. He learned that confronting his childhood fears head-on was the key to overcoming them. And as the years passed, the shadow in the closet became nothing more than a distant memory of a brave young boy who refused to be controlled by fear. In the small town of Willowbrook, nestled among dense forests and shimmering lakes, there was a place known as Willow Lake. It was a serene and picturesque spot where families would often spend their weekends picnicking and fishing. However, beneath the calm surface of the lake lay a chilling secret that would shake the town to its core. One sunny afternoon, a group of adventurous teenagers decided to explore the legends surrounding Willow Lake. Among them was Sarah, a fearless and curious girl who was drawn to mysteries like a moth to a flame. She had heard whispers of people mysteriously disappearing near the lake, but her thirst for adventure outweighed any fear. As the group arrived at the lake, the atmosphere seemed unusually still, as if the world was holding its breath. Sarah led her friends to an old abandoned boathouse that stood on the lake's edge. It was said to be the last place where a young couple vanished without a trace years ago. Ignoring the warnings of the locals, the group entered the dilapidated boathouse, the creaking wood underfoot amplifying the eerie silence around them. Sarah felt a tingling sensation on her skin, but she brushed it off as mere nerves. Inside the boathouse, they found old photographs scattered on the floor, showing happy faces of people who once cherished this place. One photo, in particular, caught Sarah's attention. A young couple smiling and holding each other close, surrounded by the beauty of the lake. As she reached for the photo, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing their lanterns. Panic set in as Sarah's friends called out to her in the darkness. She groped her way back to them, but when the lanterns were relit, she noticed something was wrong. One of her friends was missing. Frantic, they searched the boathouse, but there was no sign of their friend. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, just like the couple in the old photograph. Fear gripped the group, and they stumbled outside, deciding to return to town and seek help. As they made their way back through the woods, the dense foliage seemed to shift around them, making the path unfamiliar. The forest that was once their playground now felt like an ominous maze, trapping them within its green grasp. Each step they took seemed to lead them deeper into the heart of the woods. Panic intensified, and Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She desperately tried to recall the way back, but found herself lost in the labyrinth of trees. One by one, Sarah's friends vanished, leaving her alone in the darkness. The once familiar sounds of nature turned into eerie whispers, echoing through the trees. Shadows danced around her, and the forest seemed to come alive. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she called out for her friends, but there was no response. Fear overwhelmed her, and she clutched the old photograph tightly, seeking solace from its smiling couple. In her desperation, Sarah noticed a faint glow in the distance. Following the light, she stumbled upon an ancient-looking stone altar hidden among trees. The photograph in her hand felt warm, guiding her toward the altar. With trembling hands, she placed the photograph on the altar. As if in response, a gust of wind enveloped her, and the world around her seemed to shift and blur. A chilling voice echoed in her mind, warning her of the price she had to pay for her friend's return. Sarah hesitated but realized that she couldn't leave her friends trapped in this cursed place. With a resolute nod, she accepted the unknown consequences. The next morning, the townsfolk found Sarah lying unconscious near Willow Lake. When she woke up, she couldn't remember anything that happened after entering the boathouse. But something had changed in her. Her eyes held a haunted look that would never fade. Sarah's friends were never seen again, leaving Willowbrook plagued by the chilling mystery of the vanishing at Willow Lake, a tale whispered for generations to come. And while Sarah's courage had saved her, the price she paid remained hidden in the depths of her memory, a haunting secret that she would carry for the rest of her life. In the heart of a secluded forest, there stood an abandoned psychiatric hospital known as Ashbourne Asylum. It had a dark history of experimental treatments and unspeakable horrors. Most people avoided the place, fearing the malevolent energy that seemed to emanate from its decaying walls. One stormy night, a group of 4 friends, Alex, Emma, Mike, and Lily, dared each other to explore the haunted asylum. Alex, the thrill-seeker, led the way, driven by a fascination with the human mind and the desire to unravel the secrets of the past. Emma was hesitant, but followed to ensure her friend's safety, while Mike and Lily, a couple, reluctantly agreed to join the eerie adventure. The moment they stepped inside the asylum, a suffocating darkness enveloped them. The air seemed heavy with the despair of forgotten souls, and whispers echoed through the empty hallways. Despite their fear, curiosity egged them onward. As they ventured deeper, the oppressive atmosphere played tricks on their minds. Shadows danced on the walls, and distant cries echoed through the empty halls. Their flashlights flickered, casting eerie shadows that seemed to have a life of their own. The group soon discovered a hidden chamber beneath the asylum, a place where the most disturbing experiments were rumored to have taken place. Inside the chamber, they found a collection of old patient records, detailing the tragic tales of those who had suffered in this wretched place. Suddenly, the door to the chamber slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside. Panic set in as they realized they were prisoners of the asylum's malevolent spirit. Each member of the group began to experience strange and unsettling visions. Alex, the rational skeptic, was haunted by twisted versions of his own face in the mirrors, reflecting his deepest insecurities and fears. Emma, the empathetic one, felt a constant weight on her chest, as if absorbing the pain and anguish of the patients who once suffered here. Mike, the skeptic turned believer, heard sinister whispers in the wind, calling out his name and taunting him with long-buried secrets. Lily, the adventurous spirit, felt a chilling presence following her every step, its icy breath caressing her neck. As the night wore on, their minds became entangled in a nightmarish labyrinth, blurring the line between reality and delusion. They couldn't trust their senses anymore, each questioning their sanity and the intentions of their companions. Fractured memories from the asylum's past emerged, entwined with their own subconscious fears. The asylum seemed to feed on their vulnerabilities, amplifying their darkest emotions until they were on the verge of losing themselves. In a desperate attempt to escape, they sought to unravel the asylum's secrets, hoping to find a way to appease the malevolent spirit. However, the deeper they delved, the more they realized that the asylum's darkness was a reflection of their own inner demons. As dawn approached, the group found themselves back at the entrance of the asylum. With a final surge of courage, they confronted the malevolent spirit, facing their fears head-on. They embraced their vulnerabilities and accepted the past, no longer denying the haunting memories that shaped their lives. With one last sinister laugh, the spirit released its hold on them, and the asylum crumbled into dust, vanishing like a mirage in the morning light. The friends emerged from the forest forever changed, forever bound by the horrors they had experienced. They would carry the asylum's haunting memories with them, a reminder that the darkest horrors often reside within the depths of one's own mind, waiting to be confronted and conquered. And so they walked away, their lives intertwined, forever haunted by the mind's abyss. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more content just like this. Until next time, stay spooky. In the small, secluded town of Ravenbrook, nestled deep within the woods, a chilling tale of horror and tragedy had been whispered from generation to generation. It was said that in the heart of the forest, an old, abandoned mansion stood as a grim reminder of the past. Locals avoided the place, fearing the malevolent spirit that was said to haunt its halls. The story began decades ago when a wealthy aristocrat named Lord Jonathan Ravenscroft resided in the mansion with his family. Lord Ravenscroft was a stern and heartless man, consumed by greed and power. He had amassed his wealth through cruel dealings, often exploiting the vulnerable townspeople to line his pockets. One fateful night, a devastating fire consumed the mansion, taking the lives of Lord Ravenscroft's wife, Lady Amelia, and their only daughter, Abigail. Rumors spread that the fire was no accident, but a vengeful act by the tormented souls of those who had suffered at Lord Ravenscroft's hands. After the tragic incident, the townspeople believed the mansion to be cursed, and it was left to decay in the heart of the forest, forgotten by time. But the legend grew, and brave souls who dared venture close to the decaying structure reported eerie occurrences and haunting whispers. One stormy night, a group of adventurous teenagers decided to investigate the mansion. Lured by the thrill of the unknown, they gathered around the flickering light of a campfire, sharing spooky stories about the ghost that supposedly dwelled within the abandoned walls. Among them was Sarah, a bold and curious young woman with a fascination for the supernatural. She had always scoffed at the notion of ghosts, believing them to be figments of overactive imaginations. Determined to prove the tale false, she proposed they enter the mansion and spend the night. Despite the pleas of caution from her friends, Sarah was undeterred. She saw it as a challenge to unravel the mystery and lay the ghostly legend to rest. Ignoring the chilling wind and thunderous roars of the approaching storm, They cautiously made their way to the mansion's crumbling entrance. Once inside, they were immediately enveloped in an atmosphere of dread. The floorboards creaked with every step, and the walls seemed to whisper dark secrets of the past. Sarah led the group through the darkened hallways, feeling a mixture of excitement and trepidation. As the hours passed, the storm outside intensified, unleashing torrents of rain that pounded against the mansion's windows. The group huddled together, nerves frayed by the unrelenting sounds of the storm and the eerie silence within the house. Then they heard it, a faint sound like distant footsteps. Panic set in as the group exchanged nervous glances. They all felt it, the ghostly presence lurking in the shadows, closing in on them. Sarah, determined not to show fear, declared, "It's just the wind playing tricks on us. There's no such thing as ghosts." But the footsteps grew louder, and the temperature in the room plummeted, sending shivers down their spines. Suddenly, a chilling voice echoed through the halls, chilling their blood to ice. "I have waited so long for this night, and now you shall pay for trespassing in my domain." The voice hissed, sending terror through the hearts of the teenagers. The ghost of Lady Amelia appeared before them, her ethereal form surrounded by an ominous glow. Her eyes were filled with an otherworldly rage, and her sorrowful moans sent a surge of dread through the group. Realizing the gravity of their mistake, the teenagers tried to flee, but the ghost's presence seemed to block all escape routes. One by one, they fell victim to the malevolent spirit, vanishing into thin air, leaving no trace behind. Sarah, the last remaining, fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "I was wrong. Please, have mercy." But there was no mercy to be found in the vengeful spirit of Lady Amelia. With one final wail, she consumed Sarah's essence, leaving the mansion quiet once more, haunted by the tragic souls who had perished within its walls. And so, the legend of the ghost of Ravenbrook's mansion lived on, a warning to all who dared to challenge the realm of the supernatural. The ghost had won, its vengeful desires fulfilled, and the mansion remained forever cursed, claiming the lives of any who dared to intrude upon its forsaken halls. In the heart of the sleepy town of Moonvale, surrounded by ancient oak trees, stood an eerie cemetery shrouded in mist and secrets. The locals knew better than to wander near it after dusk, for they believed it was haunted by the vengeful ghost of a young woman named Isabella, who had tragically lost her life many years ago. Isabella had been a sweet and gentle soul, but her life had been cut short by a terrible injustice. She had been falsely accused of a crime she did not commit and was executed, her pleas of innocence falling on deaf ears. Enraged and consumed by a desire for vengeance, Isabella's spirit returned from the grave, bound to the cemetery where she had been buried, seeking to make those who wronged her suffer. Despite the chilling warnings, a group of curious teenagers, led by a daredevil named Alex, decided to spend Halloween night in the cemetery. The thrill of fear excited them, and they were eager to test the boundaries of the supernatural. As the sun set and the moon cast an eerie glow over the tombstones, the group entered the cemetery, their hearts pounding with both fear and anticipation. The air felt heavy, as if the night itself held its breath in apprehension of what was to come. They gathered around a weathered gravestone, forming a circle with nervous smiles. "This is just a spooky story, right?" one of the teenagers asked, trying to convince himself. Alex chuckled nervously, but deep down, he couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling. "Of course. There's no such thing as ghosts. It's all just urban legends. As the clock struck midnight, the air grew colder and a dense fog enveloped the cemetery, reducing visibility to mere inches. The group exchanged uneasy glances, their breath visible in the frigid air. Suddenly, a soft whisper echoed through the fog, followed by a chilling giggle that seemed to come from all directions. Panic surged through the group, and their attempt to escape was thwarted as an invisible force held them in place. Emerging from the mist, Isabella's ghostly figure materialized before them, her pale face contorted with rage and sorrow. Her eyes burned with an otherworldly fire as she unleashed a terrifying wail that pierced through their souls. The teenagers trembled in terror, their bravery replaced by raw fear. Isabella's ghost moved closer, her ethereal form sending shivers down their spines. "You dare disturb my rest," she hissed, her voice echoing like the wailing wind. "Now, you shall suffer as I have suffered." One by one, Isabella targeted the terrified teenagers, exploiting their deepest fears and haunting them with their darkest nightmares. They were paralyzed by terror, unable to escape the relentless torment inflicted upon them. As the night wore on, the moonlit cemetery became a horrifying spectacle of anguish and despair. Isabella reveled in the terror she wrought, her power over the living growing stronger with each soul she claimed. Alex, the once brave leader, was reduced to a quivering wreck, his mind tormented by haunting visions. He tried to apologize to Isabella, to beg for mercy, but his words fell on deaf ears. The vengeful spirit had no intention of granting forgiveness. By the time the sun began to rise, the once adventurous group of teenagers had been broken and scarred. Isabella's ghost, having achieved her dark purpose, vanished back into the mist, leaving the cemetery to the living once more. From that day on, the cemetery of Moonvale was forever cursed, a place where the living dared not venture. The ghost of Isabella had won, her thirst for vengeance satisfied, and she continued to haunt the town for generations to come, a chilling reminder of the consequences of injustice and the terror that lurks in the shadows. Deep in the heart of the ominous Blackwood Forest, a place feared by even the bravest souls, an ancient legend spoke of a malevolent spirit known as the Shadow Walker. It was said that the Shadow Walker was once a woodsman who had become lost in the forest and was driven mad by its dark secrets. As the story goes, the woodsman made a pact with the malevolent spirits that roamed the Blackwood Forest, granting him unnatural powers and transforming him into a ghostly entity. From that day forth, he became the harbinger of terror, lurking within the shadows, waiting to prey upon any unfortunate soul who dared to venture into the woods. The tale had been passed down through generations, serving as a chilling warning to stay away from the cursed woods. But one group of thrill-seeking friends, led by an adventurous young woman named Emily, brushed off the legends as mere folklore. Eager to prove their courage and scoffing at the notion of ghosts, they decided to spend a night camping deep within the Blackwood Forest. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows over the dense trees, the group set up their campsite. The air was heavy with an unsettling silence, and an ominous feeling settled upon them, making the hairs on their necks stand on end. "I can't believe you dragged us all the way out here, Emily," one of the friends complained, glancing nervously into the darkness. Emily laughed, trying to hide her own unease. "Come on, guys. It's just a spooky story. There's no such thing as the Shadow Walker." But her attempts to mask her fear fell short, as the atmosphere around them grew more suffocating, and the forest seemed to close in on their campsite. As the night wore on, they sat around the campfire, their laughter turning uneasy as the woods seemed to come alive with unnatural sounds. Strange whispers echoed through the trees, and chilling gusts of wind rustled the leaves, creating a haunting symphony of terror. Then, a low, ominous hum filled the air, freezing the group in their tracks. It was a sound that seemed to crawl inside their minds, sending shivers down their spines. From the depths of the forest emerged a looming figure, draped in shadows, with glowing, malevolent eyes. The Shadow Walker had come for them. Terrified, the friends scrambled to their feet, but their efforts were in vain. The Shadow Walker's unholy power held them captive, rendering them paralyzed with fear. "You have trespassed into my domain." The Shadow Walker's voice echoed through the woods, sending chills down their spines. "Now, you shall face the consequences of your arrogance." One by one, the friends were haunted by their deepest fears. The forest seemed to twist and contort around them, becoming a nightmarish labyrinth from which there was no escape. Emily, once the fearless leader, was plagued by visions of her own demise, haunted by specters of those she had left behind. Her mind fractured, and her sanity slipped away as the Shadow Walker's dark influence enveloped her. The others suffered similarly, tormented by their own demons, their minds breaking under the weight of terror and despair. The Shadow Walker reveled in their torment, feeding off their fear like a malevolent specter of the night. As the first rays of dawn broke through the trees, the Shadow Walker vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a shattered group of friends. The terror they had experienced in the Blackwood Forest had forever changed them, leaving scars that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The legend of the Shadow Walker lived on, whispered among the townsfolk, serving as a grim reminder of the darkness that lurked in the woods. The malevolent spirit had won, claiming the souls of those who dared to trespass into the Blackwood Forest, forever sealing its reign of terror in the hearts of the living. In the small town of Raven's Hollow, a legend lingered in the whispers of the locals. They spoke of a murderer, a human horror known as the Axeman, who roamed the dense woods that bordered their peaceful community. Years had passed since his last appearance, but the fear still clung to the hearts of the townsfolk like a persistent shadow. One moonlit night, a group of adventurous teenagers gathered around a bonfire deep within the woods. Adam, the brave but often reckless leader of the group, was eager to prove his fearlessness to his friends. As the crackling flames danced, he boasted about daring to encounter the infamous Axeman. His girlfriend, Emily, tried to dissuade him, her voice trembling with worry. But Adam was determined to test his courage and cement his reputation as the boldest of them all. Ignoring Emily's pleas, Adam rallied his friends to venture into the darkest corners of the forest, where twisted trees seemed to claw at the sky. The air was heavy with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant hooting of an owl. Little did they know that the ominous silence was a warning of the impending terror that awaited them. As they delved deeper into the woods, the group's laughter faded, and a feeling of dread settled upon them. A rustling in the undergrowth sent chills down their spines, and they clung together, their imaginations conjuring the axe-wielding specter that haunted their nightmares. Suddenly, a gut-wrenching scream pierced the stillness, and the teens froze in terror. They turned to see their friend, Ethan, collapse to the ground, clutching his leg as blood seeped through his fingers. Panic spread like wildfire as the reality of their situation sunk in. The Axeman was not just a story. He was real and relentless. With adrenaline surging through their veins, they carried Ethan to safety, But their escape was thwarted by the menacing figure of a man, his face obscured by shadows and his hands gripping a blood-stained axe. The Axeman had found them. Adam's bravado crumbled, and his heart pounded in his chest like a war drum. The once daring leader was now a terrified prey. The Axeman lunged forward, his sinister grin visible even in the darkness. The teens scattered in a desperate bid to survive, but the woods seemed to work against them, ensnaring them with gnarled roots and hidden pitfalls. One by one, the Axeman hunted them down. Each strike of his deadly weapon echoed through the forest, sending shivers of horror through the survivors. With each passing moment, their numbers dwindled and the feeling of doom intensified. Emily and Adam found themselves trapped near the edge of a cliff, with the Axeman closing in. In a desperate final act of defiance, Adam confronted their assailant, wielding a fallen tree branch as his makeshift weapon. But bravery alone could not defeat the malevolent force that stood before them. The Axeman's blade sliced through the air, and Emily watched in terror as the life drained from Adam's eyes. Grief and fear gripped her heart, but survival instincts kicked in. She turned and fled, tears streaming down her cheeks. In the pitch-black night, Emily ran as if the very shadows pursued her. She stumbled upon a decrepit cabin hidden among the trees, and with no other options, she rushed inside, hoping to find some way to defend herself. As she searched the cabin, she discovered a collection of old newspaper clippings, all detailing the brutal acts of the Axeman. He had once been a woodsman revered in the town for his exceptional skill with an axe. But an accident in the forest, caused by a group of reckless teenagers, left him disfigured and consumed with vengeance. With the realization of the haunting truth, Emily heard a chilling sound outside the cabin, the haunting scrape of metal against wood. The Axeman had found her. Armed with newfound knowledge, Emily decided to face the monster head-on, using the Axeman's own tragedy against him. She lured him into the cabin, where darkness embraced them both. In the fierce struggle that followed, Emily managed to dislodge an old support beam, causing the roof to cave in upon them. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the Axeman's twisted smile. The legend of the Axeman lived on, but in a different light. The human horror was not just a merciless killer, but also a tormented soul, forever imprisoned in the woods he once loved. And as long as the tale endured, the residents of Raven's Hollow would tread cautiously through those haunted woods, lest they awaken the malevolent spirit that lurked within the trees. In the small town of Brooksville, a sinister figure lurked in the shadows, striking fear into the hearts of its residents. His name was Mr. Jingles, but he was known far and wide as the Killer Clown. This was no supernatural being. He was a human, twisted and deranged, who found pleasure in terrorizing those who dared cross his path. Mr. Jingles had once been a cheerful and beloved clown who performed at children's birthday parties, bringing joy and laughter to all. But one fateful day, a tragic accident at the circus left him scarred both physically and mentally. A pyrotechnics malfunction set fire to the big top, and Mr. Jingles suffered severe burns all over his body. He lost everything he held dear that day, including his family. In his pain and despair, he blamed the world for his misfortune. The laughter that had once been music to his ears now mocked him. Hatred and vengeance consumed him, turning him into the monster he had become. It was a stormy night when Mr. Jingles re-emerged as the Killer Clown, dressed in a tattered, blood-stained clown suit and a mask that concealed his disfigured face. He stalked the streets, seeking prey. With a wicked grin, he toyed with his victims, leaving eerie clown dolls as a warning of their impending doom. The town's inhabitants began to live in fear, afraid to venture out after dark. Parents warned their children to stay away from strangers and closed their curtains tightly at night. But Mr. Jingles was cunning and knew how to exploit people's deepest fears. His first victim was young Tommy, a boy who couldn't resist the temptation of exploring an abandoned circus tent rumored to be haunted. As Tommy stepped inside, the entrance collapsed, trapping him in darkness. Mr. Jingles appeared before him, his eyes glowing with malevolence. With a sinister chuckle, he revealed his true intentions. The townspeople tried to catch the killer clown, organizing search parties and patrolling the streets, but he always seemed one step ahead. His movements were like shadows, elusive and unpredictable. The fear grew, and the town descended into chaos. As the body count increased, fear began to consume the community. No one felt safe anymore. The police were baffled, and rumors spread that the killer clown was invincible, that he had made a deal with the devil himself to gain supernatural powers. The truth, however, was far more horrifying. Mr. Jingles was simply a master of disguise and manipulation. He had spent years perfecting his skills, blending into the crowd during the day and striking at night. He knew the town's ins and outs, every hidden alley and secret passage. One night, he set his sights on Sarah, a young woman whose laughter had once been his greatest joy. Consumed by grief and rage, he blamed her for the accident that had ruined his life. Now, it was her laughter he sought to silence forever. But Sarah was no ordinary victim. She had sensed Mr. Jingles closing in on her and decided to confront him. Armed with knowledge of his past, she lured him to the old circus grounds where it had all begun. In a chilling showdown, Mr. Jingles and Sarah faced each other beneath the dilapidated big top. Thunder rumbled overhead, and rain poured down, as if nature itself recognized the gravity of the moment. As they circled each other, memories flooded back for Mr. Jingles. He saw the joy he once brought to children's faces, the smiles that were now forever lost to him. A flicker of humanity remained within him, but it was buried under layers of darkness and pain. Sarah pleaded with him to let go of his hatred and find redemption, but Mr. Jingles was too far gone. With a blood-curdling scream, he lunged at her, brandishing a gleaming knife. Yet, in that final moment, fate intervened. Mr. Jingles slipped on the wet ground, and his knife flew from his hand. It was enough of a distraction for Sarah to grab an old fire extinguisher nearby. She swung it with all her might, hitting him square in the head. Dazed and disoriented, Mr. Jingles fell to the ground, and the mask that had hidden his scars for so long came off. Sarah looked at the man behind the monster, seeing the pain and torment he had endured. Despite everything, she couldn't bring herself to take his life. Instead, she called for the police and stayed with him until they arrived. Mr. Jingles was apprehended, and justice was served for his heinous crimes. The town began to heal, but the scars of that dark chapter would forever remain etched in their collective memory. And so, the tale of the killer clown ended, not with a ghostly apparition, but with the realization that true horror can be found in the depths of human suffering and the darkness that can consume even the brightest souls. In the small town of Ravenwood, an eerie silence blanketed the streets at night. Whispers of dread lingered in the air, for an unknown terror had gripped the community for years. A string of brutal murders had haunted the town, and the locals feared the presence of a relentless serial killer who moved like a shadow in the night. Detective Alex Mercer was assigned to the chilling case, haunted by the memories of previous victims and the elusive killer who always managed to leave no trace behind. As he delved deeper into the darkness of the crimes, he discovered a pattern. Each murder was carefully planned and executed with precision, indicating an intelligent and methodical predator. The town was plagued with fear, and the citizens rarely ventured out after dusk. Doors were locked, curtains drawn, but no one felt truly safe. Alex could feel the weight of the town's terror, driving him to find the sadistic murderer responsible for these heinous acts. The killer struck without warning, often targeting people who seemed unconnected at first. It was as if he reveled in the chaos and unpredictability of his crimes. He left behind cryptic messages, taunting the police and creating a chilling atmosphere of uncertainty. As Alex followed the disturbing trail of clues, he couldn't shake the feeling that the killer was watching him, playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse. It seemed like the killer had a deep understanding of forensic investigation techniques, always one step ahead of the law. As weeks turned into months, and the body count increased, the entire town lived in a perpetual state of anxiety. Alex's obsession with catching the serial killer grew, taking a toll on his personal life. Sleepless nights and disturbing visions of the crime scenes haunted him, threatening to unravel his sanity. One stormy night, when the rain lashed against the window panes, Alex received an anonymous tip. The message was chillingly clear. The killer wanted to meet him. He was challenging Alex to a final confrontation, a twisted endgame. Despite the risks, Alex couldn't ignore the opportunity to confront the monster who had terrorized Ravenwood for so long. He chose to meet the killer at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The wind howled as he approached the dark and eerie building, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. Inside the warehouse, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb, the serial killer awaited him. The room was filled with an ominous aura, and a grotesque mural covered one of the walls, showcasing the killer's disturbing psyche. "Welcome, Detective Mercer," the killer's voice echoed, sending shivers down Alex's spine. "I've been waiting for you." The confrontation that followed was a deadly dance of wits and instincts. The killer reveled in describing the details of his heinous acts, explaining the rationale behind each murder as if it were a sick work of art. He admitted to a dark fascination with the vulnerability of human beings, finding pleasure in their fear and suffering. As the truth unfurled, Alex's resolve strengthened. He realized that the killer was not some supernatural force, but a deeply disturbed and cold-blooded human being. The monster before him had twisted the boundaries of humanity and reveled in the chaos he caused. With every ounce of courage, Alex lunged at the killer, engaging in a brutal and desperate struggle. In the end, after an intense fight, Alex managed to overpower the murderer and apprehend him, bringing an end to the reign of terror that had haunted Ravenwood for so long. Though the town would never forget the horrors it had endured, it began to heal, finding solace in the closure brought by the killer's capture. Detective Alex Mercer, however, would never be the same. The darkness he had encountered left scars on his soul, a constant reminder that true horror could reside in the depths of humanity itself. The Shadow Man. In the small, secluded town of Ravenswood, nestled amidst dense forests and shadowy hills, a terrifying presence lurked in the darkness. For years, the townspeople had whispered of a malevolent figure that stalked the streets at night, preying on unsuspecting victims. They called him the Shadow Man, a name that sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest souls. One cold and foggy autumn evening, Emily, a young woman with auburn hair and an adventurous spirit, returned home after a late shift at the local diner. As she walked along the dimly lit streets, an eerie feeling washed over her, as if unseen eyes were watching her every move. She quickened her pace, trying to dismiss the unease gnawing at her mind. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, Emily caught a fleeting glimpse of a dark figure darting behind the trees. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her instincts told her to run, but curiosity held her back. She convinced herself that it was merely a trick of the shadows. Over the next few nights, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time she turned around, there was no one there, yet she felt a presence lingering nearby. She became paranoid, closing her blinds and double locking her doors. Sleep eluded her, and exhaustion etched deep lines on her face. One evening, as Emily prepared dinner, the power went out, plunging her home into darkness. The silence seemed heavier than usual, and the absence of streetlights amplified her fears. Trying to calm herself, she reached for her phone to call the power company when she noticed a message notification. Her heart sank when she saw the sender's name, the Shadow Man. Trembling, she opened the message. It was a chilling photograph of herself, taken from outside her window, the blinds partially open. The room behind her was pitch black, and only her illuminated figure stood out in the picture. Panic consumed her, and she felt like a helpless mouse caught in a predatory cat's sights. The messages kept coming, each one more ominous than the last. The stalker knew details about her life that no stranger should know. The terror escalated, and Emily felt trapped in her own nightmare. Desperate for help, she confided in the town sheriff, but even he seemed hesitant to believe her. After all, there was no concrete evidence of the Shadow Man's existence. Still, he assigned an officer to patrol her neighborhood at night, hoping to ease Emily's anxiety. One foggy midnight, as Emily lay awake in her bed, the silence was shattered by the sound of shattering glass. Her heart leaped into her throat as she realized the intruder was inside her house. She reached for her phone to call the police, but the signal was weak and the call wouldn't connect. In sheer terror, she hid in her closet, trying to make herself as small and quiet as possible. The creaking of footsteps echoed through her home, growing closer with each passing second. The door to her room opened slowly, and she saw the silhouette of a man outlined by the faint glow of the moon. Just as she felt the stalker's presence mere inches away from her hiding spot, a loud crash came from the front door. The patrol officer had arrived, alerted by the noise of the intruder breaking in. The shadow fled into the night, leaving Emily shaking and in tears. With the truth finally exposed, the town rallied to support Emily, and the police intensified their efforts to catch the stalker. The night patrols doubled, and the entire community kept watch for any suspicious activity. Slowly, the fear that had gripped Ravenswood began to loosen its hold. But as the days turned into weeks and then months, the Shadow Man remained elusive. He seemed to have vanished into thin air, leaving behind a legacy of terror that haunted the town for years to come. To this day, the legend of the Shadow Man lives on in Ravenswood, a cautionary tale for those who dare to venture out into the darkness alone. The memory of his sinister presence lingers in every shadow, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we cannot see. The haunting of Blackwood Manor. In the small, secluded town of Blackwood, nestled deep within the dark woods, there stood an imposing mansion that had stood for centuries. Blackwood Manor. The locals whispered tales of tragic history, unexplainable occurrences, and restless spirits that were said to roam its halls. Many considered it cursed, and few dared to approach its ominous gates. The legend began centuries ago when the original owner, Lord Reginald Blackwood, lived there with his wife, Lady Amelia. They were known to be a wealthy and prestigious couple, but their fortune came at a terrible cost. Lord Blackwood was said to be obsessed with arcane knowledge and practiced dark arts in secret. Rumors spread that he made a pact with malevolent entities to ensure his wealth and power. The townspeople whispered that Lady Amelia was tormented by haunting visions and inexplicable noises echoing through the corridors of the mansion. Some even claimed to have seen her wandering the grounds in a spectral form, her once vibrant eyes now hollow and lifeless. The locals believed her soul was trapped within the manor, damned by the dark forces that her husband had unleashed. As years passed, Blackwood Manor fell into ruin. Its imposing facade became a ghostly silhouette against the backdrop of the moonlit sky. The once beautiful gardens were now overgrown with tangled thorns and eerie shadows. Yet, despite its decrepit state, there were those who claimed that the mansion's malevolence had not diminished, and that its halls still echoed with the tormented souls of the past. In the present day, the town of Blackwood had all but forgotten the mansion's grim history. People had grown accustomed to living with the tale of the haunted manor, regarding it more as a myth to scare children than a dark reality. That was until the Johnson family, recent newcomers to Blackwood, decided to move into Blackwood Manor, hoping to restore its former glory. John and Elizabeth Johnson were an adventurous couple with a passion for old architecture. The mansion's grandeur and tragic history intrigued them, and they felt a strange draw to the place. They moved in with their young daughter, Emily, despite the warnings from the superstitious townspeople. For the first few weeks, the Johnsons found the mansion to be enchanting. They restored its elegant ballroom, dusted off ancient chandeliers, and repaired the creaking wooden floors. Yet, as time passed, odd things began to happen. Doors slammed shut on their own, chilling whispers echoed in empty rooms, and shadows danced along the walls. Emily, the Johnsons' young daughter, was the first to sense the malevolence that lurked within Blackwood Manor. She spoke of an invisible playmate named Amelia, describing her as a sad woman who wore beautiful but tattered dresses. Emily would giggle and converse with Amelia, but her parents chalked it up to the imagination of a lonely child. As the days grew colder, so did the atmosphere in the mansion. John and Elizabeth often heard indistinct voices arguing late into the night, but when they investigated, the voices ceased. One evening, while the family was having dinner in the elegant dining hall, the candles flickered violently and the temperature plummeted. Emily claimed that Amelia was there, her presence felt by the young girl alone. The tension among the family members escalated as they struggled to rationalize the strange happenings. They decided to invite a renowned paranormal investigator, Professor Edward Hartley, to help them understand what was transpiring in their new home. Professor Hartley had faced numerous haunted locations, but Blackwood Manor was unlike any other. Upon arriving, the professor immediately sensed the malevolent energy lingering in the air. He conducted thorough investigations, using advanced equipment and old-fashioned ANSYS. As days turned into weeks, the darkness within the mansion intensified. The professor discovered that the spirit of Lady Amelia was indeed trapped, but not by her own doing. Through intense research into the manor's history, Professor Hartley unraveled a tragic tale. Lord Blackwood's dark practices had indeed bound Amelia's spirit to the mansion, and the only way to free her was to break the curse he had initiated centuries ago. With the help of local historians, the professor and the Johnsons learned about an ancient artifact called the Talisman of Souls. Legend had it that this talisman had the power to dispel malevolent spirits and break curses. However, its whereabouts were unknown, lost to time and the shadows of the past. Determined to save Amelia and cleanse the manor of its malevolence, the family and the professor embarked on a perilous journey to find the Talisman of Souls. Their quest took them deep into the heart of the haunted woods, where they faced numerous trials and terrifying encounters with vengeful spirits. Their search was fraught with danger, but they persisted, driven by their love for Emily and the desire to liberate Lady Amelia from her torment. In the end, their perseverance paid off, and they discovered the ancient talisman hidden within a long-forgotten crypt. With the Talisman of Souls in hand, they returned to Blackwood Manor. The family, with Professor Hartley's guidance, performed a complex ritual to break the curse that had bound Amelia for centuries. The ritual involved unlocking the talisman's power and channeling it through the mansion's walls, purifying the malevolent energy that had held Amelia captive. As the ritual reached its climax, the mansion trembled, and a blinding light engulfed the entire estate. The spirits of the past manifested briefly before vanishing into the ether. When the light finally subsided, Lady Amelia stood before them, her once melancholic expression now filled with peace and gratitude. Amelia's spirit, finally free, thanked the Johnsons and Professor Hartley for their bravery and compassion. With a soft smile, she faded away, her spirit finally at rest. The Johnsons knew that the mansion would forever be haunted by its past, but now it was a haunting of memories, rather than malevolence. From that day on, Blackwood Manor no longer emanated malevolent energy. Instead, it stood as a testament to the strength of love and the power of compassion. The tale of the haunted mansion persisted through generations, but it was a tale of redemption and hope, reminding people that even the darkest places could find light once more. And so, the Johnson family lived in Blackwood Manor for years to come, sharing the tale of Lady Amelia and the Talisman of Souls with visitors who dared to venture into the old mysterious mansion in the woods. Blackwood Manor, once a cursed place of tragedy, had transformed into a beacon of hope and a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In the small town of Ravenswood, nestled among the dense woods, stood an abandoned asylum. Once a place of hope and healing for the mentally ill, it now lay in ruin, shrouded in eerie legends and ghostly tales. The townsfolk spoke of strange sightings, chilling cries echoing through the night, and mysterious lights flickering in the darkness. The asylum had been abandoned for decades, but its haunting presence lingered on. The story begins with a young and ambitious journalist named Emma. She had a fascination with the supernatural and a desire to unravel the truth behind the asylum's dark history. Emma believed that there was more to the haunting stories than mere superstitions. Determined to uncover the asylum's secrets, she embarked on a journey to investigate the abandoned building. Equipped with a camera, a voice recorder, and a journal, Emma ventured into the crumbling asylum one foggy evening. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and every creaking floorboard sent shivers down her spine. She navigated through the decaying hallways, documenting her experiences as she went along. As she delved deeper into the asylum's heart, Emma began to sense an otherworldly presence. Something not quite right. Whispers echoed around her, but the source of these eerie sounds remained unseen. Her heartbeat quickened, and she questioned whether she should continue her investigation. Ignoring her fears, Emma pressed on, Guided by her curiosity and determination, she soon stumbled upon a hidden chamber within the asylum's labyrinthine structure. Inside, she discovered a stack of old patient files, revealing the tragic and horrifying treatment of the mentally ill during the asylum's operation. Among the files, one caught Emma's attention, the story of a young woman named Isabella, who had been wrongly committed to the asylum by her own family. According to the records, Isabella had been a talented artist, but her family considered her eccentric behavior a sign of madness. They confined her to the asylum, where she endured unimaginable suffering. As Emma continued to read, she felt a sudden chill in the air. The lights flickered, and shadows seemed to dance on the walls. Unbeknownst to her, Isabella's spirit had awakened, drawn to the intruder, who now held her tragic tale in her hands. The presence grew stronger, and Emma began to experience bizarre phenomena. Objects moved on their own, and disembodied whispers surrounded her. Yet, in her heart, Emma could feel Isabella's sadness and anger, as if the young woman's tormented soul sought acknowledgement and vindication. Emma realized that she couldn't leave without putting Isabella's spirit to rest. With her journalistic instinct still intact, she decided to piece together the truth and bring justice to Isabella's memory. She returned to the town archives and uncovered evidence of Isabella's wrongful commitment, proving that she had been sane all along. Armed with this newfound information, Emma reached out to the living descendants of Isabella's family, hoping to make them acknowledge their ancestors' unjust suffering. Through heartfelt pleas and the weight of undeniable evidence, Emma convinced them to clear Isabella's name and recognize the grave mistake made by their ancestors. With the truth finally acknowledged, the asylum's haunting presence began to subside. Isabella's spirit, having found peace, was no longer bound to the asylum's tragic past. The townspeople, learning of the truth, came together to honor Isabella's memory and turn the abandoned asylum into a memorial for the mistreated patients who had once resided there. In the end, the haunted asylum became a symbol of redemption and hope. Emma's courage and determination not only brought closure to a restless spirit, but also shed light on the dark chapters of the town's history. And so, the legend of the haunted asylum in Ravenswood transformed from a tale of terror to one of compassion and understanding, reminding everyone that even in the darkest of places, the light of truth can shine through. In the small town of Hollowbrook, there was an old circus that had been abandoned for years. The townspeople spoke of strange occurrences happening near the site, but it was the tale of a malevolent clown that sent shivers down their spines. They called him Grinsworth, and his face was etched in the nightmares of those who dared to speak his name. Legend had it that Grinsworth was the star attraction of the circus in its heyday, a clown who brought joy and laughter to the crowds. But something changed within him, and he became obsessed with the idea of eternal youth and immortality. In his madness, he sought dark and forbidden knowledge, delving into occult rituals to achieve his twisted desires. One stormy night, a group of curious teenagers, fueled by rumors and a desire for thrills, decided to explore the abandoned circus. As they ventured into the crumbling big top, they felt an eerie presence surrounding them. The wind howled, and the sound of rustling fabric sent chills down their spines. Suddenly, a flickering light revealed Grinsworth standing before them. His face was painted in grotesque colors, his eyes hollow and piercing. A malevolent grin stretched across his face as he cackled menacingly. The teens tried to flee, but they found themselves trapped, surrounded by an unseen force. Grinsworth's voice echoed in their minds, a haunting melody that paralyzed them with fear. One by one, he toyed with their fears, revealing their deepest insecurities and using them against them. The clown's presence seemed to warp reality itself, turning the funhouse mirrors into portals to their nightmares. Terrifying images filled their minds, each more ghastly than the last. As the night wore on, the circus seemed to come alive, with sinister laughter echoing through the air and ghostly apparitions dancing on the fringes of vision. Grinsworth's malevolence grew with each passing moment, his hunger for the teenager's fear evident in every gesture and word. But amidst the terror, one brave girl, Lily, found an old, dusty book hidden within the circus grounds. It spoke of a ritual that could banish the malevolent spirit of Grinsworth forever. Lily knew that this was their only chance to survive the nightmarish ordeal. With trembling hands, she began the ritual, chanting incantations to confront the clown's malevolence. Grinsworth's laughter turned to fury as he fought against the spell's power. The ground shook, and the air crackled with energy as the battle between good and evil played out. Finally, with a blinding flash of light, Grinsworth's twisted form was engulfed in darkness, vanishing into the void. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the teens found themselves standing in the abandoned circus, safe but shaken. The malevolent clown was gone, but his memory would haunt their dreams for years to come. From that day on, the old circus remained undisturbed, a place shrouded in mystery and fear. The townspeople knew better than to approach it, for they feared that Grinsworth's malevolent spirit might still linger, waiting to trap unwary souls in his nightmarish grasp. And so, the tale of the Clown of Hollowbrook became a cautionary tale, a warning never to play with the darkness that lurks in the abandoned places of the world. In the small, secluded town of Blackwood, nestled deep within a dense forest, an eerie silence hung over its eerie streets. The townspeople lived their lives with an air of caution, for they knew about the cult that lurked in the shadows, a religious sect that worshipped an ancient and malevolent deity. For generations, the cult of the Crimson Serpent had maintained its grip on Blackwood, invoking fear and reverence in equal measure. Their leader, the enigmatic High Priestess, was said to possess supernatural powers, able to communicate with the serpentine god that they worship. One moonlit night, a brave investigative journalist named Bailey arrived in Blackwood to unravel the secrets of the cult. Armed with determination and curiosity, Bailey began to delve into the town's dark history. The townspeople were hesitant to speak of the cult, but whispers in the night told of chilling rituals that occurred in the depths of the forest. Bailey's investigations led her to an old, decaying mansion on the outskirts of Blackwood, the rumored epicenter of the cult's activities. As she approached the ominous building, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread, but her resolve remained unshaken. The mansion seemed to leer at her, its windows like soulless eyes watching her every move. Inside the mansion, Bailey discovered a hidden chamber filled with disturbing relics and symbols, a shrine to the Crimson Serpent. The walls were adorned with cryptic scriptures and paintings of grotesque rituals. The air was thick with the scent of incense, mingled with the iron tang of blood. As Bailey continued her investigation, she encountered the cult's followers, zealots dressed in blood-red robes adorned with the serpent symbol. Their eyes were hollow, and their devotion to the High Priestess was unquestionable. Bailey soon realized she was not alone in the mansion. The cult had been alerted to her presence. She tried to flee, but the cultists pursued her through the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion. Trapped and terrified, Bailey stumbled upon a hidden door that led to an underground catacomb, the heart of the cult's rituals. There, she witnessed a chilling scene, a congregation of cultists, encircling the high priestess and a massive statue of the Crimson Serpent. The serpent's eyes seemed to flicker with an otherworldly glow. Bailey's heart pounded in her chest as she hid behind a crumbling pillar, praying to remain undetected. The high priestess raised a ceremonial dagger, and the cultists chanted in a macabre rhythm. In a terrifying ritual, they offered a sacrifice, a helpless villager abducted from the town. Bailey watched in horror as the life force was drained from the poor soul, feeding the malevolent deity. The sacrifice complete, the Crimson Serpent statue appeared to come alive, its eyes blazing with unholy fire. Bailey's breath caught in her throat, and she knew she had to escape before she became the cult's next offering. With a courage born of desperation, Bailey managed to slip away from the catacombs and back into the forest. But the cult was relentless in its pursuit. The deeper she ventured into the woods, the more she felt the malevolent presence of the Crimson Serpent surrounding her. As Bailey stumbled through the dense underbrush, she saw eerie apparitions lurking between the trees, shadowy figures with glowing eyes and serpentine forms. She could feel the cult closing in on her, their chilling chants echoing through the night. Finally, Bailey reached the outskirts of Blackwood, exhaustion and terror weighing heavily on her. She knew she had to warn the world about the cult's existence, about the ancient evil that dwelled in the heart of the forest. With the rising sun, she made her way to the nearest town, where she shared her harrowing tale with the authorities and journalists alike. News of the cult of the Crimson Serpent spread like wildfire, and an investigation was launched to dismantle the sect and put an end to their malevolent rituals. But even with the cult disbanded, the legend of the Crimson Serpent continued to haunt the town of Blackwood. For those who had witnessed its horrors, the memory lingered like a nightmare, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can take root in the hearts of the devout and the dangers of religious fanaticism gone awry. In the small town of Ravenswood, a quiet darkness lurked beneath the surface. Residents went about their daily lives, unaware of the malevolent presence that stalked their streets at night. For years, a serial killer had been haunting the town, leaving a trail of terror in their wake. The locals referred to the killer as the Shadow, for they struck under the cover of darkness and left no trace behind. No one knew their identity, and fear had gripped the community in its icy hold. The police were baffled, unable to connect the dots between the seemingly random victims. One fateful night, the moon hung low, casting an eerie glow upon the streets of Ravenswood. In a quaint, old-fashioned neighborhood, a young woman named Emily found herself walking home alone after a late shift at the local diner. Unbeknownst to her, the Shadow had been watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As Emily rounded a dimly lit corner, a chilling gust of wind ruffled her hair, and she sensed a sinister presence lingering nearby. Her heart raced, but she tried to convince herself it was just her imagination playing tricks. She quickened her pace, clutching her phone tightly in her trembling hand. Just when she thought she was safe, she heard a faint whisper behind her. "Emily," it hissed, sending shivers down her spine. Emily glanced over her shoulder and saw a fleeting shadow among the trees, a figure that seemed to melt into the darkness. Terror consumed her, and she broke into a desperate run, but the shadowy figure was quick on her heels, closing the distance with each step. Emily's breaths grew ragged, and her feet pounded against the pavement as she desperately searched for any sign of help. But the streets were deserted, and the only sounds were her frantic gasps and the haunting laughter of her relentless pursuer. Panic gripped her heart as she realized there was no escape from the Shadow's grasp. Finally, with her strength waning, Emily spotted a flickering light ahead, the local church. Desperation guided her there, hoping for sanctuary within its walls. As she reached the entrance, she banged on the wooden door, begging for someone to let her in. A lone priest, Father Thomas, opened the door with a puzzled expression. "What's the matter, my child?" he asked. "There's someone following me. Please, help me," Emily pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Father Thomas pulled her inside and locked the door behind them. He could sense the genuine fear in Emily's eyes and knew that something truly sinister lurked outside. Together, they peered out of the church's windows. In the pale moonlight, they caught a glimpse of the shadow's ominous silhouette, watching them from a distance. The priest's face turned grave as he whispered, "The night will pass, and the sun will bring safety." Hour after hour, they huddled together, praying for dawn to break. The sounds of distant sirens echoed through the town, indicating that the police were on the hunt for the elusive killer. But the shadow remained, playing a chilling game of cat and mouse with the authorities. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, the shadow retreated into the shadows, vanishing like a ghost. Emily's fear began to subside, replaced with gratitude for Father Thomas and the safety of the church. But the nightmare wasn't over. The sun's light revealed a chilling truth. The walls of the church were adorned with haunting symbols and cryptic messages, all hinting at the existence of a sinister cult that had long been manipulating Ravenswood from the shadows. The revelation sent shivers down Emily's spine, knowing that the shadow was not acting alone. The cult's presence meant that the horror would continue, and no one in Ravenswood would ever be truly safe. From that day on, the town lived in perpetual fear, always looking over their shoulders, wondering if the shadow would strike again. As the unsolved murders piled up, the legend of the serial killer grew, perpetuating a cycle of terror that Ravenwood couldn't break free from, a chilling reminder that evil can exist anywhere, even in the most unsuspecting places.